They always say it's the little things that ruin your day. For me, it was that damn fire truck parked halfway across the sidewalk and bleeding into the street, lights flashing like it owned the place. Regulations existed for a reason, emergency or not. I was tired, already knee-deep in paperwork and pissed off from a morning argument with my lieutenant. When I saw that truck, I wasn't in the mood to be lenient. The firefighter jogged over, helmet tucked under his arm, soot smeared across his cheekbones like war paint. He had this confidence that grated at me instantly, like he already knew I'd rip up that ticket before he even got there. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, brushing ash from his gloves. His voice was steady, unbothered. I didn't look up. "You're illegally parked," I said, pen scratching across the paper with more aggression than necessary. He pulled off his helmet, and I was struck by how disheveled he looked, and yet, somehow, entirely put together. Sweat beaded along his hairline, trickling down his neck. "We were responding to a fire," he replied incredulously. "You want us to park legally next time? Maybe pay the meter before we put out the flames." I kept my gaze focused, steady. "There are procedures," I snapped back. His eyes flicked to my name badge, and he raised an eyebrow. "Ryan, huh? Rough day?" I stiffened. "It's Officer Torres. And no, just tired of people thinking they can do whatever they want because they wear a badge." I regretted the words the moment they left my mouth. He smirked, and for a split second, I swear his eyes flickered over me, not just at me. "That includes firefighters."
The cop was tense. The kind of tense you feel when you've had enough bullshit for one day. His hands were tight on his ticket pad, knuckles pale. I couldn't help myself. I like pushing buttons, especially one so neatly pressed and polished. "I don't mind being fined if it means I get to see you again," I said, leaning in just a little too close. His pen stopped mid-scratch, and he stared at me like I just slapped him. "Excuse me?" I shrugged, letting a grin spread across my face. "You heard me. I don't mind paying the fine, as long as you're the one writing it." For a second, I thought he might write me up for harassment, but he just blinked, mouth slightly open before I turned back to my crew. I didn't miss the way his eyes followed me as I walked away, though. A flicker of something, curiosity? Confusion? Maybe both. I like that. I like that a lot.
I didn't expect to see him again. But the universe, or maybe just dumb luck, had other plans. It was a week later, my night shift dragging its feet when the call came in: "All units, structure fire at 12th and Maple. Fire and rescue en route." My cruiser screeched to a stop at the intersection, headlights cutting through thick plumes of smoke curling up into the night sky. Firefighters were already on scene, hoses snaking across the pavement, water arcing toward the blaze. And there he was, helmet off, laughing with one of his crew like this was just another Saturday night. I stepped out of the car, trying to ignore the way my heart kicked up a gear. "Just doing my job," I told myself. "Keep the perimeter clear. Make sure the crowd doesn't get too close." Jake spotted me before I could look away. He jogged over, grin wide and infuriating. "Officer Torres. Didn't think you'd make it." "McAllister," I replied, nodding stiffly. "Hope you're parked legally this time." He laughed, bright and genuine. Always aiming to please. His eyes flicked to my uniform. "You here to watch the show, or just came to admire the view?" My face went red before I could stop it. "I'm here to keep the perimeter secure," I shot back, voice sharper than I intended.
He was flustered, I could tell, the way his shoulders squared up like he was building an invisible wall between us. Too bad I'd always loved knocking things down. I slowed my pace, wiping soot from my face. "Well, you're doing a hell of a job," I said, voice dipping just a little. "Maybe next time, I'll park legally just to make your life easier." He almost smiled. Almost. I'd appreciate that. Or, I continued, stepping just a little closer. "You could just join me for a drink sometime. Maybe I can explain how emergency parking works." His breath caught. I saw it. I felt it. But his mouth stayed shut, jaw clenched. "I'm on duty," he finally replied. I just shrugged. "Offer stands." I called back, jogging toward the blaze. I could feel his eyes on me as I walked away. Smiling to myself, I grabbed the hose. The weight of it grounded me back to reality. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just set something on fire, and I hoped he'd let it burn.
I told myself 100 times I wouldn't call him. But 100 wasn't enough. His number burned a hole in my pocket, folded neatly inside that ticket stub I never turned in. A reminder of everything I should ignore, and everything I couldn't stop thinking about. I dialed before I could change my mind, breath held like I was about to step off a cliff. Ryan Torres, came his voice, smooth and sure. Didn't think I'd hear from you. I guess I'm full of surprises, I replied, heart thudding so hard I was sure he'd hear it through the phone. Is that right? He chuckled. Guess you'll have to show me. Tonight? There was a pause, and I held my breath again. You got it, officer.
I hung up the phone, grinning like an idiot. The guys caught on quick, ribbing me about my hot date. If only they knew. I leaned back in the firehouse recliner, helmet still sitting on the bench next to me. It wasn't a date, not really, just a drink, just seeing what was there, or wasn't. But the way he sounded on the phone? Hell, I was already hooked. You're glowing, one of the guys shouted. I just flipped him off and grabbed my jacket. Don't wait up, I called out, the guys howling with laughter behind me. I didn't know what would happen tonight, but for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to find out.
I pulled up to O'Hara's pub, headlights catching the faded wooden sign swaying gently in the evening breeze. It was a place I'd been to a dozen times before, always with coworkers, always drowning out the job with beer and bullshit. But tonight felt different, sharper, like the edges weren't quite sanded down. I cut the engine and sat there, hands gripping the wheel, staring at the soft glow of neon spilling out onto the pavement. I shouldn't have called him. I knew that. But the thought of not calling him felt like losing something I hadn't even held yet. So I took a breath, shoved open the car door, and stepped out. Jake was already there, leaning against the brick wall just outside the entrance, arms crossed over his chest, smile spreading slow and easy when he saw me. You're early, he called out, pushing off the wall. I shrugged, shoving my hands into my pockets. Could say the same for you. He laughed, a low rumble that seemed to settle right in my chest. Guess we both couldn't wait. We stepped inside, the familiar scent of spilled beer and fried food wrapping around us like a worn-in jacket. The bar was half full, regulars nursing pints, couples huddled in dark corners. Jake gestured to a booth near the back, and I followed, heart hammering louder than it should have. We slid into opposite sides, and he flagged down the bartender with a casual ease. 2 whiskeys, he said, and then his eyes flicked back to me. That work for you? I nodded. Yeah. You always this talkative, he teased, leaning back, arms sprawled along the back of the booth. I smirked despite myself. Depends on the company.
I pulled up to O'Hara's pub, headlights catching the faded wooden sign, swaying gently in the evening breeze. It was a place I'd been to a dozen times before, always with coworkers, always drowning out the job with beer and bullshit. But tonight felt different, sharper, like the edges weren't quite sanded down. I cut the engine and sat there, hands gripping the wheel, staring at the soft glow of neon spilling out onto the pavement. I shouldn't have called him. I knew that, but the thought of not calling him felt like losing something I hadn't even held yet. So I took a breath, shoved open the car door, and stepped out. Jake was already there, leaning against the brick wall just outside the entrance, arms crossed over his chest, smile spreading slow and easy when he saw me. You're early, he called out, pushing off the wall. I shrugged, shoving my hands into my pockets. Could say the same for you. He laughed, a low rumble that seemed to settle right in my chest. Guess we both couldn't wait. We stepped inside, the familiar scent of spilled beer and fried food wrapping around us like a worn-in jacket. The bar was half full, regulars nursing pints, couples huddled in dark corners. Jake gestured to a booth near the back, and I followed, heart hammering louder than it should have. We slid into opposite sides, and he flagged down the bartender with a casual ease. 2 whiskeys, he said, and then his eyes flicked back to me. That work for you? I nodded. Yeah. You always this talkative? He teased, leaning back, arms sprawled along the back of the booth. I smirked despite myself. Depends on the company. Jake. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I wasn't expecting him to be nervous. The guy who practically lit me up with his eyes the first time we met now sat across from me, like he didn't know where to put his hands. The drinks came, and he sipped his whiskey, like it burned going down. So I started, swirling my glass. You do this often? His brow furrowed. Do what? Get drinks with guys who leave you parking tickets? He snorted, almost spilling his drink. Pretty sure you're the first. Good. I replied, catching his gaze. I like being first. He didn't look away this time. Didn't flinch. Just stare right back. and I swear I saw the wall he had up crack, just a little, enough for me to want to knock it all the way down. We talked for hours about the job, the grind, the crap we saw every day that didn't make it into the news. He was sharp, funny when he let his guard down. By the time last call rolled around, I didn't want to end. We stepped outside, the night air cool against the flush of whiskey on my skin. He stood there, hands jammed in his pockets, eyes fixed on the ground. "You good?" I asked, stepping a little closer. He looked up, eyes catching mine. "Yeah." For a second, I thought he might say something else. But instead, he just stood there, watching me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I took a breath and went for it. "You want to do this again?" The hesitation was brief, barely a flicker. Then he nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." I grinned. "Then we will." And just like that, I knew this was only the beginning.
I told myself I'd take it slow, that the whiskey and his easy laugh wouldn't get to me. But it did. He did. I replayed that night at O'Hara's too many times, how his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he leaned in just close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, smell the faint trace of smoke and cologne. It clung to my thoughts like ash on skin, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake it. I didn't wait long to call him. 3 days, maybe 4. Long enough that I didn't seem desperate, but not so long that I'd risk him forgetting that spark that danced between us. He answered on the second ring. "Torres," he greeted me, like he'd been waiting. "Thought you might have chickened out." I rolled my eyes, even though he couldn't see it. "You busy this Friday?" I asked, leaning back in my chair at the station, boots kicked up on my desk. "Depends," he replied smoothly. "You buying?" "I can spring for the first round." He laughed, and I could almost see that grin. "I'll take it."
I showed up early again. Couldn't help it. That little voice in my head said maybe he'd back out. Maybe he'd change his mind and decide this was all too much. But when he walked in, hair still damp from the rain, shaking droplets off his jacket, I knew I'd been wrong. "You look like you wrestled with the weather and lost." I teased, pushing a pint his way. He took it, smirking as he sat down. "You try running 3 blocks in this crap and see how good you look." I raised my glass to him. "I'll give you a pass." We clinked glasses, and I watched him take that first sip, eyes closing just a little like it hit right where he needed it. We fell into conversation as easily as last time, the hours slipping by. It wasn't forced. It wasn't awkward. It was just right. By the time the bar began to thin out, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't want the night to end. But I wasn't sure if I should push it. Wasn't sure if he'd want me to. But when we stepped outside and the rain had stopped, leaving the street glistening under the streetlights, I felt his hand brush mine, just barely. I turned to him, his expression guarded but hopeful. "My place is a couple blocks over," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "If you want a drink that doesn't come out of a pint glass." He hesitated, and I almost pulled back, but then he nodded, eyes locked on mine. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'd like that." I don't remember the walk there, just the adrenaline humming under my skin, the way his shoulder brushed mine with every step. By the time we reached my door, my hands were shaking, but I didn't care. I fumbled with the keys, and he laughed softly behind me. "Nervous?" he asked. I turned, catching his gaze. "Maybe a little," I admitted. "You?" He didn't answer, just stepped closer, and when he kissed me, it wasn't tentative. It wasn't soft. It was everything I'd been wanting since the moment I saw him, and hell if I didn't want more.
The apartment was modest, neat, with minimal clutter. I barely had time to take it in before Jake shut the door behind us, the lock clicking into place a little louder than it probably needed to. For a second, neither of us moved. My heart thudded, heavy and deliberate, and I swore I could hear his breath hitch in the silence. "You want that drink?" he asked, voice low and rough. "I'm good," I replied, stepping forward. "I want something else." There was no more hesitation after that. His hands were on me, pulling me close, and I met him halfway, lips crashing together in a way that felt less like a first and more like something long overdue. The tension we'd been carrying for weeks snapped, shattering into something raw and real. We moved toward the living room, bumping into walls and tripping over shoes, laughing into each other's mouths like teenagers sneaking around. By the time we reached the couch, I was breathless, his hands tangled in my hair, my fingers sliding beneath his shirt to feel the hard lines of muscle I'd only imagined. He pulled back, just an inch, eyes searching mine. "You sure?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Yeah. I'm sure." And that was all it took. His lips found mine again, and we tumbled onto the couch, hands roaming, exploring, learning. It wasn't rushed. He was careful, almost tender. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it, really feel it. Like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake.
I'd never been with a guy before. I'd thought about it, sure, in those quiet moments when my brain wandered to places it wasn't supposed to go. But Ryan, he was different. He didn't feel like some experiment or something to get out of my system. He felt real. He felt right. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless and flushed, he looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. "You good?" I asked, brushing my thumb over his jaw. He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "More than good." I laughed, the sound coming out half disbelieving. "Me too." We stayed there for a while, tangled up on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. About work, about family, about stupid stuff that didn't matter. And it felt easy, natural, like I'd known him longer than just a few weeks. Eventually, the conversation faded, replaced with soft touches and lazy kisses that went on long after clock struck midnight. And when he finally left, the silence felt heavier, like he'd taken something with him. Or maybe left something behind. Either way, I knew I wanted more. And I was going to make damn sure I got it.
The sirens wailed, blaring against the midnight sky as we rolled up to a 3-alarm fire off of Easton Avenue. The building was already half engulfed, flames licking at the windows, smoke billowing into the stars. My adrenaline kicked in like it always did, the familiar rush of chaos and control, the rhythm of danger and order. I jumped off the truck, snapping my helmet into place as Captain Murray shouted orders. "Henderson, you're on extraction." "Got it." I shouted back, grabbing my gear. I was halfway to the entrance when I heard shouting, frantic and sharp. "There's still someone inside," a woman screamed, clutching a child to her chest. "He didn't come out." I didn't hesitate. "Going in." I barked into the radio, diving headfirst into the blaze. The heat hit me like a freight train. Thick smoke clawed at my lungs, but I powered through, my eyes scanning the room. "Hey!" I called out, voice muffled by my mask. "Anyone in here?" I heard a faint cough, somewhere to my left. I pivoted, pushing through the flames, and there he was, an older man, slumped against a wall, barely conscious. "Got you," I murmured, grabbing him under the arms and hoisting him up. He groaned but didn't resist, his legs dragging as I pulled him back the way I came. The flames roared louder, and for a second, I thought we weren't going to make it. But the door appeared, hazy and flickering through the smoke. I barreled through it, collapsing onto the pavement just as the medics rushed over. "Ryan," someone shouted. I looked up, blinking away soot, and there he was. Jake. Standing just beyond the yellow tape, hands on his hips, eyes locked on me. I didn't even think. I just waved, grinning like an idiot. His mouth twitched, somewhere between a smile and a scowl, but I saw the relief in his eyes. And it was enough.
The call came over the radio. Something about a fire off Easton. I knew that was Ryan's district, but I didn't think much of it. Firemen fight fires. It's what they do. But when I pulled up for crowd control and saw the flames licking the night sky, my stomach twisted. I scanned the trucks, the faces, but he wasn't there. Just smoke and shouts and chaos. My heart hammered in my chest, and I realized then that it wasn't just some fling. Not to me. Not anymore. When he burst out of that building, covered in soot and grinning like he just won the damn lottery, I almost forgot to breathe. Relief slammed into me like a wave. I wanted to run to him, to grab him by the shoulders and say, "What the hell were you thinking?" But I didn't. Couldn't. He waved at me, the idiot, covered in ash and still smiling. I nodded back, hands stuffed in my pockets to keep from doing something stupid. But I knew then this wasn't going away. Not for me, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to.
2 months after that fire on Easton, I found myself standing outside Jake's apartment building, hands stuffed into my jacket pockets as the first traces of winter cut through the evening air. My breath clouded in front of me, and I almost laughed at how dramatic it all felt, like some scene out of a rom-com, but this wasn't scripted. This was real, and I was standing here because I wanted to be. I hadn't told him I was coming. He'd just gotten off shift an hour ago, and I knew he'd be home. My heart hammered in my chest as I climbed the steps and knocked on his door. It didn't take long before I heard the deadbolt turn, the door swinging open to reveal Jake in a plain white t-shirt and sweatpants, hair still damp from the shower. "Hey," he said, eyebrows lifting in surprise. "Wasn't expecting you." I swallowed hard, shoving my hands deeper into my pockets. "I know." He stepped aside, wordlessly inviting me in. I crossed the threshold, warmth enveloping me as he shut the door. I turned to face him, nerves buzzing under my skin. I needed to see you." His expression softened. Yeah. I took a step closer, my hand reaching out to graze his arm. "I'm tired of pretending this is just some fling. I don't want to keep sneaking around or pretending like this doesn't mean something." He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the walls crumbling. His jaw clenched, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd pushed too hard. But then he nodded, just once. "Me neither." I smiled, relief flooding my chest. "So what do we do?" Jake closed the gap between us, his hands resting on my hips. "I say we stop pretending." And with that, he kissed me, not the tentative, testing the waters kind of kiss, but something deeper, something final. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling in the quiet. "You staying tonight?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I laughed softly. "If you'll have me." He squeezed my hips. "I'm all in, Ryan."
I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of bacon sizzling. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. But when I rolled over, I saw him, Ryan, standing in my kitchen, barefoot and shirtless, flipping bacon like he'd always been there. "You're up," he said, turning to flash me that grin that I swear could light up a whole city block. I rubbed my eyes. "Sitting up? You made breakfast?" "Didn't want you thinking I was just here for the bed," he joked, setting a plate down in front of me. I chuckled, shaking my head. I could get used to this. He slid into the chair across from me, his eyes softening. "Good, 'cause I'm not going anywhere." And for once in my life, I believed it. When I reached across the table and took his hand, he didn't pull away, and neither did I. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next.